Before I begin, on behalf of every member of the Charlottesville Police Department, I want to take a moment to send our deepest condolences to the families of the 3 Virginia residents who lost their lives Saturday. As you know, Charlottesville resident Heather Heyer was struck down by a vehicle while exercising her peaceful right to speech. The city stated earlier that while it will never make up for the loss of a member of our community, we will pursue charges against the driver of the vehicle that caused her death and are confident justice will prevail. The Virginia State Police Lieutenant Cullen and Trooper Pilot Bates were working with the Charlottesville Police Department this past weekend to protect our community. These men also gave their lives in the line of duty, and our gratitude to them cannot be overstated. Their loss is a loss for us all, and we mourn with their families and colleagues. We are working with the Heyer family to ensure that the safety of vigils and other memorials that are planned for this week are safe. We plan to keep the 4th Street crossover closed until further notice, as there are thousands of flowers lining the street, and that is the location of the crash site. We are also establishing a hotline for any victims or witnesses to contact local authorities and provide information that may not have been reported during the weekend. We understand it was a traumatic weekend for everyone. We are still receiving reports of assaults and additional crimes, and we're working with our state and local partners to investigate thoroughly any criminal or civil rights violations that may have occurred this past weekend that have not yet been reported. Throughout the entire weekend, the Virginia State Police, Charlottesville Police Department intervened to break up fights and altercations among those in attendance at the rally site. This began on Friday night and continued through Sunday. The city tracked approximately 250 calls for service on Saturday alone. In many of the conflicts, individuals would strike and then disappear back in the crowd. State police medics rendered aid to approximately 36 injured individuals on Saturday, including several of the traffic crash victims on Water Street. The early morning hours on Saturday, Virginia State Police and Charlottesville Police were positioned in and around and across the street from Emancipation Park in order to readily observe and monitor the actions of the crowds and respond as quickly as possible when emergencies arose. There were also state and local police on foot patrols and at road closures at various locations throughout the parks, so we could respond to emergencies occurring beyond the immediate area of Emancipation Park. Law enforcement were staged at McIntyre Park as well. You can see we had a very large footprint during this entire endeavor. Around 10 o'clock, the Unite the Right attendees began arriving and entering Emancipation Park. We had a plan to bring them in at the rear of the park. They had agreed to cooperate with the plan. Unfortunately, they did not follow the plan. They began entering at different locations in and around the park, and we had to quickly alter our plans to help facilitate that process. Other groups also began amassing along the street and in the park. Gradually, the crowd sizes increased along with aggressiveness and hostility of attendees towards one another. Shortly before 11 a.m., individuals in the crowd began throwing objects and spraying chemical agents into the crowd. The city and county then made a declaration of local emergency. The crowd size became increasingly violent with mutually engaged combatants, with one-on-one attacks following. An unlawful assembly was declared, and the state police troopers began to safely move individuals out of the park and through the streets. Charlottesville police officers were originally on site in their everyday uniform. We were again hoping that the members of the alt-right rally would cooperate with our safety plan of ingress and egress. Once the violence began to erupt, we transitioned our officers into their protective equipment. We proceeded with an organized response to ensure that we could safely restore order in and around the park. No tear gas was deployed on Saturday by any law enforcement officers. There were a few instances where the Virginia State Police deployed OC, or better known as pepper spray, on those individuals refusing to comply with the unlawful assembly declaration to leave Emancipation Park. And I would like to take a moment and open the floor to questions if you have any.
Why was the 4th Street Crossway open?
Chief, last month you handled the KKK story.
Is it true on September 12th that they're planning, if they haven't already said it, there are going to be multiple rallies, Richmond, Lexington, and here, September 12th?
I'm not sure that information is credible, but yes, we have heard those rumors as well. No one has contacted us directly concerning other demonstrations in and around the state.
Why was the 4th Street crossing open before 2 p.m.? It was supposed to be closed till 7.
I'm not sure whether or not the 4th Street crossing was open. I don't have the action plan with me currently, but I am certain that the action plan called for the street to be closed.
Have you established a motive for the car strike suspect?
Last month for the Ku Klux Klan rally, we were here. You guys were there from the beginning. You were in the middle of the rally. You kept the two sides separate. Why did you take a different approach on Saturday?
Well, this was a completely different event from the rally on July the 8th. The entire action plan was different. We did make attempts to keep the two sides separate. However, we can't control which side someone enters the park. We had agreements and worked out a security plan to bring the groups in separate entrances. Again, they decided to change the plan and entered the park in different directions.
Chief, we've heard reports that police did not do enough to break up fights, that it appeared they were standing around letting people do get out, and some people have suggested they may have been intimidated by the firepower of the alt-right. Can you respond to that?
We were certainly not intimidated by the firepower of the alt-right. However, it was prudent to make sure that officers were equipped to go out and deal directly with the violence at hand. Originally, we had our officers out in their everyday uniform. We were hoping for a peaceful event. We urged leaders from both sides to engage in a nonviolent demonstration. Once the violence erupted, once the plan was altered, we had to quickly transition our officers into their protective gear. Once the unlawful assembly was declared, we requested the state police mobile field force to deploy in their riot gear, and our officers took a position behind them at that point to guard their rear.
I witnessed personally dozens of acts of violence, people being assaulted, and other journalists saw this as well, with police officers in sight watching who did not intervene or help those victims. Did you give any orders to police officers not to help people who were being assaulted?
No.
Why did you intervene though?
At the point that it turned violent, why didn't you guys clear the streets completely? Why allow any protesters at that point to remain on the streets?
We did clear the park, and once the crowds were dispersed, they went to many locations throughout the city. At that time, we had to actually send our forces to multiple locations to deal with a number of disturbances in and around the downtown area. It took probably an hour to gain control of the streets. We had groups that were moving constantly. We were following a number of groups, ensuring that they were being peaceful. But it was a challenge. It was certainly a challenge. We were spread thin once the groups dispersed.
Was there a decision to just end it though? Was there at any point a decision or thought process to say, this might not be a good idea to let these people continue to march around the streets, knowing that these two sides were so agitated at that point?
Yes, we have to focus on behavior and criminal activity, not just citizens walking in our streets.
Chief, this didn't end well. Do you have any regrets, and do you wish you would have come more prepared, so to speak? In other words, you knew what was coming. You met with them, you had a plan, you talked it out. Do you regret not having your officers better prepared and in their proper gear earlier so they could have acted sooner?
Absolutely, I have regrets.
And what are your regrets?
We lost 3 lives this weekend. I certainly have regrets. We lost 3 lives this weekend, a local citizen and 2 fellow officers. We certainly have regrets. It was a tragic
Chief,
weekend.
This is from your department. Do you regret your actions and your decisions that day?
I explained what our regrets are. We regret this tragic day. We regret that we had a tragic outcome and we lost lives.
Chief, do you believe that
believe that one side was more responsible than another for instigating the violence?
This was an alt-right rally.
Do you believe that they're the ones who instigated the rally, the fighting?
We did have mutually combative individuals in the crowd. We tried to be patient. We tried to give the individuals in the crowd who wanted to leave, we wanted to make sure that they were able to leave safely. We facilitated that process. We had a number of individuals who chose to remain and cause violence, cause disturbances in our community.
Thank you. We have heard from a senior law enforcement source in another county whose officers were here that in a briefing conducted here for law enforcement, we had Friday night or Saturday morning that officers were instructed to make no arrest without the explicit approval of the Charlottesville mayor. Our law enforcement source says that he was outraged by the instruction. Did you or the mayor or anyone on the mayor's staff instruct law enforcement not to make arrests unless approved by the mayor?
No, and I'd like to know who that officer is who allegedly made those remarks. That is simply not true. Folks, thank you so much for your time.
Sir, can I just ask one last question? What will you do differently next time, sir?